is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Hey, folks, I'm excited about this continued conversation of how do we stay grounded in a world full of noise and chaos. Really, this is something that impacts everyone's lives. However, for Jaimie and I, our experience has been that military and first responder world. And we've seen that there's a lot of noise and chaos out there that can infect our family life, our mental health, our physical health, our relationships. And we don't want that for you. We want you to carve out the time to identify those foundations for yourselves and to stay grounded. That's what we're doing here today. Staff Sergeant Andrea Gump of the West Virginia Air National Guard is going to be here on the show. I actually found her just by one of her posts that she did, I think probably a couple weeks ago, and I was really impressed by the mindset. And I thought, I want that mindset to come on the show and share some ideas. She's young, however, she is a leader, and she's doing remarkable things over there on the East Coast. I'm excited for you to hear from her. But before that, folks, I want to talk about 484 Hero and their event coming up on January 8th, Coffee with Dan. Jaimie and I and the Gravity Podcast is their national sponsor for this year for 2024. Deputy Dan McCartney was a friend of ours. And on January 8th, 2018, he was murdered in the line of duty as a Pierce County Sheriff's deputy over in Western Washington. And just what we've seen his widow, Sierra, do in starting 484 Hero and the event Coffee with Dan on January 8th, a dual-purposed event. One being to remember the legacy of Daniel, and two, to say thank you to our law enforcement officers around the country. So right now, 484 Hero is partnering with coffee shops to identify coffee shops that will give out a free cup of coffee for our first responders, for our law enforcement officers on this day. And they're either covering the costs or working with the coffee shops to split the costs, or some coffee shops are just saying, hey, we got this. We're going to do this, and we're going to fund it ourselves. So if you haven't checked them out, please check them out, 484hero.com. Great information about what they're doing to show gratitude towards our police officers. And with that, let's get into this interview with Andrea Gump. Andrea Gump, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor to be here with you today.
Hey, I'm excited to talk about your experiences. You and I don't know each other very well, so this is going to be a great first conversation. Me learning more about you and just the adventures, the challenges, and your life lessons that you've learned through more than just being in the West Virginia Army National Guard, although I'm sure that's significant, but I think there's more to you than that. Do you mind just introducing yourself to anyone that doesn't already know you?
Absolutely. So my name is Andrea Gump. Yes, like Forrest Gump. No, I'm not related to him.
That joke was running through my mind all morning, and I thought, I'm not going to be corny. I'm not going to be that guy. I really appreciate you for saying that. All right, keep going.
Absolutely. Well, the thing I always tell everybody, there's two things. One, I'm just very grateful that my parents did not name me Jenny. The second is that a lot of people say that I look like young enough to where I could kind of trick people. And when they say, oh, or like Forrest Gump, I can be like, I've never even heard of that. And then the looks on people's faces, they're like, oh my gosh, you've never heard of Forrest Gump? And of course, that's when I say, no, I've heard of Forrest Gump. But I am a 26-year-old. I had to think about that for a second. Born and raised in Wheeling, West Virginia. I'm in the northern panhandle of West Virginia, which it's been awesome living here my whole life because I can be in Pennsylvania in 10 minutes and Ohio in 10 minutes. I currently live in Ohio, but as you said, I am a member of the West Virginia Army National Guard. I've been in the military for about 8 years. I had a year-long deployment to Iraq and Kuwait just 30 days after my college graduation. After that, I worked at the news for a little bit as a news reporter, which was great, actually, which I'm sure, we can talk about that later on in the show. But I'm a dog mom. I am a coffee lover. And I love yoga too. So I'm a huge family person. And that's a little bit about me.
I love it. So what drew you, because your degree's in broadcast journalism, is that correct?
Yes,
What
yes.
drew you to being on camera?
Oh, that's a great question. So I always told my mom when I was younger that I just wanted to be famous, right? And hopefully that wasn't like a famous, like something crazy. Hopefully it was something for the good, right? So I was fortunate enough to go to a high school that had an incredible broadcast journalism program within the school. So we had our own radio show, we had our own TV show, and I really allowed my passion for becoming quote unquote famous to kind of grow and flourish within that role while I was in high school. And I took on, a lot of different leadership positions within the school TV program. And I had a lot of fun with it. And, you know, I, I always looked up to Katie Couric. I specifically remember, which this is kind of like patriotic and TV related, but I remember, although I was young, when 9/11 happened. And I loved how Katie Couric was able to effectively communicate what was going on during such a dark time in our country's history, right? So I had always been inspired by her, and I would truly say like Katie Couric is what is what really sparked that within me. And then having those opportunities throughout high school to grow my passion and continue to grow it and get better made it a no-brainer when it was time to decide what I wanted to study in college at Kent State University.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then how do you divert though? Because I'm gonna throw you in a box for a second because
Okay.
I was our public information officer at my police department here towards the end of my career. And so
Sure.
I've done a lot of on-camera interviews, and most of the reporters are not military material. Now, I love them. They are great human beings. They are storytellers, right? And they do a good job of telling story, which I love,
Yes.
but they are not military material. So at what point did you decide that your broadcast journalism girly girl self was gonna go and do like army stuff?
Well, that's a great question. So, another great question. You're good at this. Um, no, so I started my freshman year at Kent State University, and that was an out of state school for me at that time. So, with an out of state school comes out of state tuition. Well, my best friend's mom, kind of like take it back a little bit. My best friend's mom, growing up, she deployed to Afghanistan. She was there for about 2 full years at the height of the war. So she was like the first real inspiration for me and the first like real face of a veteran that, I could connect to. As a woman, I had grandfathers and things that had served, but as a woman, that she was monumental for that. So I kind of toyed with the idea of potentially joining the military in high school. And I actually signed up to take the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. And I took that to see if I was even qualified to join. I was never a good test taker, so I was kind of nervous what those results would look like. But I took it when I was 16 years old. And at that time, that score didn't matter anyway. So when I started growing my passion for journalism in high school, I kind of put that idea of joining the military on the back burner. Well, when it was time to apply for college and I chose Kent State University, I was like, this is great. I love it here. This is going to be awesome. I was a semester in. It was like I said, halfway through my freshman year. And I called my mom, and I'm a religious person. And so I told her, I said, I'm wrestling with this decision of coming back home and saving money and maybe going to a cheaper school, or you know should I stay here, should I be willing to take on this much student loan debt at the end of it all for really just a piece of paper. What should I do? And in that moment, I swear to you, I got an email from a recruiter that said, join the Army National Guard, earn 100% of your tuition free. And right then and there, I was like, oh my gosh, I can do both. So I ran down to the recruiting office. Well, I didn't actually run down to the recruiting office. My last name might be Gump, but I'm not a runner. So I walked very fast, like a quick pace, like you do on Black Friday. You're ready to get that TV, right? That was me. I was ready to get that free education. And I reached out my right hand and I said, I'm Andrea Gump. I got your email. what are the, like, how can I make this a reality? And just a couple months later, a couple weeks later, actually, I raised my right hand and I enlisted in the Ohio Army National Guard. And I credit that day as the day that truly changed my life forever, because that dark cloud that was weighing over my head, the student loan debt, the wrestling with the idea of pursuing my passion, or, coming back home and maybe settling for less, it was gone. It was like the sun came out, the birds were chirping, the angels were singing hallelujah, and it was the most perfect decision I could have ever made for myself. So joining the Army National Guard was huge for me, because I got to do two things that I was passionate about. And also, when you think about it from a professional standpoint, when you go to apply for a job, the first thing that they're going to do is look at your resume. I saw all the competition that I had in these classrooms. There were a lot of people that were a lot better than I was at reporting news and connecting with people. And I looked at this as an opportunity to also grow my resume and to get my dream job, to land that dream job as a news reporter. And I thought that maybe the Army National Guard would also help set me apart. So those two really like played hand in hand with each other, and it kind of just worked out, and the rest has been history.
You have made my job really difficult in what you just said, because there are so many layers. You talked about female role models. I'm a dad of 4 daughters, no sons. And so having women model leadership all around the world that my daughters can look at is really important to me. You talked about just the reality that so many of our young people face with not wanting to take on debt. And at first you felt like you had to pick or choose. Did you know when you joined the Ohio National Guard, did you know that you were going to be able to do broadcast journalism, or were you even in that in Ohio, or was that after you switched to West Virginia that you did your skill set?
So I actually enlisted as something completely different. I was so hungry just to get into the Army National Guard. They could have told me I would be licking the dumpsters clean, and I would have said, I will do it.
I don't know
So
what MOS that is, but
yeah, that's the licking dumpster MOS. I forget what that code is for that, but no, I'm just kidding. But I originally enlisted as an automated logistical specialist, which is I was ordering aircraft parts at the time. So for me, the way my recruiter sold it, because he sold it at the time, because I was dead set. I was like, I want to be a broadcast journalist in the Army National Guard. I felt like, oh, I can't do anything else. Like kicking down doors and blowing things up. Are you kidding me? Like, absolutely not. And but then he told me, he said, well, if you're going to be a broadcast journalist and a news reporter for your regular 9 to 5, your 1 weekend a month, you might want to be doing something different. And it might actually provide you with a different skill set that you can add to your resume. And it can give you something to fall back on in case you wake up one morning and you're like, okay, I don't want to be the next Katie Couric. I want to do something different. So I looked at that as an opportunity again to kind of learn more. And also, I thought that it would help me become a more well-rounded individual, because he was right. Why not learn an additional skill set that I could, convert into the civilian world in another area if I wanted to or needed to. So I didn't even think about that. But then it wasn't until I came to the West Virginia Army National Guard, when they saw what I was doing for the news at that time, because I had worked at the news, when they reached out to me and they said, we want you now to do what you're doing for the news for us. So yeah, and we can get into that too, but.
Love it. Hey, you've a couple times, and I didn't know this about you. You're a humble person, and that isn't easy to balance, because I'm telling you,
Thank you.
when you're getting on TV and when you're getting social media likes and when you're doing that kind of stuff, well, I don't know about you, but it goes to my head sometimes. Like somebody's like, I am pretty amazing at me. I'm great. But that's a part. And then I also have this other part that is very humble, that recognizes that I need to use what God has given me to benefit other human beings. And if God has given me the gift to talk to people, then I need to use that for his glory. And just the fact that I love the fact we have to be humble, folks, like looking to your left and right and going, you know what? I'm not the best person in the room. I'm not the best investigative journalist in my undergraduate program. And if I'm going to be great at this, I'm going to need to do something about it. So we can either give up or pretend, or we can go, I'm going to actually take some serious steps forward in getting better. And it sounds like that's what you did.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, of course, I used to like hyper fixate on the numbers and the analytics and who was I connecting with and who was I not connecting with. And that was more when I took on that role as social media marketing specialist for the West Virginia Army National Guard. But now that I've become a military career counselor, the most important thing to me is connecting with people. And if I can use my voice to help share the stories of others and also use my voice to share my own story with the hopes to educate, motivate, or inspire somebody, then I am on God's errand. Like he has given me this task and I'm just making it come to life. So thank you for that compliment. I really appreciate that. And it is something that I strive to do because I know I'm not the best. I know that there are so many areas in my life that I need to be better at. And I'm just always looking for ways to learn and grow and just be a good human.
So here's the thing, everyone listening that's military or paramilitary knows that you're a current recruiter because none of the rest of us know what ASVAB actually stands for. So clearly you have to be a military career counselor in order to know that acronym.
Yes. Hey, I had to look that up just 5 seconds ago. No, I'm just kidding. I knew it.
I have no doubt you knew it, but I don't know. Did you know it before you became a recruiter?
No, I had no clue. My recruiter told me, he said, "Hey, this is like the SAT or ACT for the military, and this is what you're going to be doing." And I was like, "Okay, I can do that." But when he said no calculator, I panicked. I can barely even use a calculator. So,
So how did you decide to make this change? Because again, you have a passion for telling stories, and that's a good passion to have. Where did you all of a sudden do this pivot towards becoming a military career counselor?
so, so I'll kind of backtrack just a little bit. So when I was deployed overseas, I was ordering aircraft parts, and that was great. That was awesome. I had a mission. I was able to be a part of it, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. So I asked my commander if I could be the unit public affairs representative for my unit. I wanted to be able to help our family members and friends who were 6,000 miles away from us feel like they were on that deployment with us to help everybody feel closer. And it just makes things easier. So I took that role very serious as the unit public affairs representative, also known as the UPAR. And I actually started making YouTube videos while I was overseas. Now I know everyone's like, Sergeant Gump, like you're supposed to be fighting wars and winning battles and things, and you're making YouTube videos. Well, yeah, if I was going to be doing this stuff, I wanted to document it, not just for myself and for my family members and friends, but maybe even for my kids one day to say like, hey, my mom did this. Like that's pretty cool. So those videos that I actually created with the Army National Guard captured the attention of the news director back home at the local news station that I grew up watching. And I had placed an order for a rotor, I believe. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got a phone call. Now, I never answered my phone at all when I was overseas because it cost money. But something in me was telling me, like, you need to answer this phone call. And I did. And it was the news director, and he didn't realize, obviously, the time change, but it didn't matter anyway because I was up working night shift. But he said, "Is this Andrea Gump?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "We've never done this before, but we've seen the YouTube videos that you're creating on your deployment, and we want to hire you over the phone, and we want you to work for us when you get back to American soil." And if you can imagine the look on my face, my jaw immediately hit the ground. Like I was like, oh my God, this, I'd been praying about this. I was worried that the deployment was going to set me back, and it actually helped me. So when I came home, I started reporting news during COVID. That was like a crazy time to be reporting news. It was 2020. I started in March, and I reported news during that whole. It was like the craziest time that you could start a job as a news reporter. I was like, yeah, let me do that. So I started reporting news, and it was crazy. But then I got an opportunity from actually the command sergeant major who got me to transfer from the Ohio Army National Guard to the West Virginia Army National Guard because I wanted to be back home at this point. he sent me an email and it said, you can apply for the Next Greatest Generation campaign in California, blah, blah, blah. All you have to do is submit your resume and this, that, and the other, and you can be a part of these commercials. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have done amazing things throughout my military career, like flying in Chinooks and Ospreys and Black Hawk helicopters and shooting off rounds and cannon artillery systems. But I never thought that I would have the opportunity to film a commercial for the Army National Guard. So I didn't even hesitate. I applied for this opportunity, and luckily I was one of, I think there was like 27 people that were selected across the country. They put me on orders. The news was okay with that. I mean, they were going to have to be okay with that because I had to go. And when I got to California, they tested us all for COVID. And guess what happened to me?
You pop positive.
I tested positive for COVID. Yes. Now, it ended up being a false positive, but because I was in California, in order to protect everybody, and I didn't want to be like that person just in case that contaminated the entire production staff and all the talent and everybody. So I stayed in my hotel room. Well, that's when, at that point, the chain of command back home in West Virginia, they were devastated. They were like, we're so sorry that you're stuck in this hotel room now for 10 days. And I was like, hey, that's okay. I'm getting room service and living my best life. This is awesome.
Good attitude.
Exactly. Yeah. So they said, well, actually, we've now seen your resume for, this application that you submitted. And that's when they offered me the job to come on as social media marketing specialist for the West Virginia Army National Guard. Now, at that time, I was like, okay, tell me more. So they said, well, we'll put you on orders. You'll be making 3 times as much or 4 times as much. You'll have health insurance, life insurance, basic housing allowance, all the military things that I was missing out on as a regular traditional National Guard soldier. So when they said that they were going to put me on orders and all I had to do was make Instagram posts and TikToks at the time and YouTube videos and all these things, it was a no-brainer. So about a year and a half, I did that. And I, again, used my voice to help share the stories of others that wore the same uniform as I did, which was so cool. I traveled all across the country. And I got to really connect with the people that I'm serving, alongside, which was awesome. But then finally, after a while, I got kind of burnt out on social media, and it took a toll, not necessarily on my mental health, but I didn't have boundaries. I didn't know really where to cross that line. I'd get a notification at 11:30 at night while I'm watching a movie with my boyfriend. Do I respond? This person wants to join the Army National Guard. Like, I feel like I have to respond. So that's when the position opened up as a military career counselor in my alma mater, the high school that I graduated from. And again, kind of took it as another sign from God, like maybe I should do this. But I was like, I don't know, social media is pretty cool. And I've heard horror stories about being a military career counselor. Am I going to be making a mistake? And that's when I received another phone call from another different command sergeant major of the recruiting and retention battalion. And he said, we know you are the best fit for this job. You have told the stories of others. We think now it's time for you to tell the story of yourself to connect with people. And right then and there, he said, I need you to tell me to show me the money and that you want to do this and you're all for this. And I kind of just took that leap of faith, and the rest is history. So
are you
I took a long way to get there.
That was good. I appreciate it. Are you on active duty then as a military career counselor?
Yeah, so I am on what's called active Guard Reserve orders. So I'm full-time active Army National Guard, which I think is like the best kept secret for the military. I get to go home to my home wherever I want to go. And I get to be with my family. I don't have to wake up early and do PT. I mean, if I want to, I can, but it's not like I don't have to report to anybody. I'm kind of just like my own boss. I'm in charge of my own mission and get to do what I want to do. So I genuinely think that AGR is the best kept secret of the military because I reap all the active duty benefits, but I'm still a National Guardsman, if that makes sense.
That does, yeah. And just with my Air Force experience, we had Air Guard. I don't know the title for it, but they were full-time folks that carried out the day-to-day mission for the different guard units and
Yes.
ready for their mission. Wow. And so how long have you been in the recruiting? It's hard for me not to say recruiting. I'm going to keep saying
That's
that.
okay.
I'm
That's fine.
trying to say the new vernacular, but how long have you been a recruiter for?
So August 1st was a year for me.
Love it.
So I'm about a year and a half in, and it's been an emotional roller coaster, that's for sure.
What part of it? What part made it an emotional roller coaster?
Um, I think just knowing like how wonderful of an opportunity that this can be for kids, especially like the young adults in my hometown. And the hardest part for me has been knowing that what kind of future they could have if they decided to raise their right hand and enlist in the Army National Guard, and not necessarily dealing with the rejection that is a part of it, but then seeing them, working at McDonald's instead when they were a fully qualified person and they could be living a completely different life. Not that there's anything wrong with working at McDonald's, but I see the potential in a lot of these kids, and sometimes they don't see it in themselves. So that is really hard. That's been like the most emotionally challenging part for me, because I just want everyone to have a successful life. And successful, like I said, can come in many different ways. It doesn't have to be living in a big brick house and the picket fence and the kids and the all the traditional things. But um, I think just knowing how beneficial it could be for some individuals, and they just don't see it for themselves, is emotionally exhausting. I'm like a mother, a mother to to all of them. I just want to help them. So
Well, I can agree with that. I worked at a burger place for my first job,
yeah,
and it was a fine job. And if someone wants to make that a career, I mean, you can make good money as a regional
absolutely.
manager for McDonald's. Or and my experience was that I decided to join the military, and I got the benefits of the GI Bill. I have a master's degree and I didn't pay a dime for that or my bachelor's degree, right? I got the experience of meeting remarkable human beings all over the world, and having this still have a relationship with them because of us serving together in Korea and Iraq. So no, I agree with you. When young people talk to me, I used to be a school police officer at the high
Oh
school that I went to. So similar thing, going back to my
my
story,
gosh.
and I looked at those young folks as my kids,
Yeah.
not as my biological kids. I have four daughters, and those are my biological kids. But I looked at them as I had a certain amount of responsibility to mentor them and to try to nudge them towards making great life choices. And the military, I think, is a great opportunity for folks that don't don't necessarily know exactly what they want to do, or like me, don't have college money. And so
Right.
I joined to pay for college, much like you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like we know the benefits of it, but then it's just trying to portray that and get them to see and feel it and picture themselves wearing the uniform is great. And they say like the recruiting crisis is very real. The recruiting crisis is I don't have an issue with people wanting to join. Everybody that I talk to in some way, shape, or form has that drive or has thought about it at least once. People want to serve. Right now, the issue is people not being medically qualified to serve or academically qualified to serve. So those are the biggest areas also that have been challenging for me as a recruiter, is getting over those initial hurdles, because before, when you and I enlisted, people would just say, oh, just, your recruiter might say like, just don't mention that, or, shut up. Don't say that to anybody, or don't be honest about that. But nowadays you can't hide anything. Like if you're a 17-year-old, you want to enlist in the Army National Guard, you can with parental consent. But if you had bronchitis or pneumonia and you were prescribed an inhaler for 2 weeks when you were 10 years old, they're going to pull that up in your medical records, and they may require you to get a pulmonary functions test. So something that like is so simple and little can really create a huge obstacle for those who want to enlist and want to enlist right now. So it, what used to take maybe a couple days to 2 weeks to a month is now taking sometimes half of a year to a year just to enlist one person. So it's an obstacle.
One thing you said there that I don't like. So I don't know the Army core values, but the Air Force's core values are integrity first, service before self, excellence in all you do. And so when you are bringing young folks in to the greatest military force in the world, I believe, and right off the bat, you're telling them, hey, don't talk about that. That'll get you DQ'd. And then we send them off to boot camp and to their technical training schools where we're trying to instill these core. It's there's this dichotomy in messaging, and
Yes.
life is okay with dichotomies. That's the reality of life. But this isn't one that we should be creating for our young folks, that you need to always be truthful, own up to stuff.
Exactly.
But don't do it when it has to do with your asthma.
Right. Right.
If you
Because
don't,
that could be life altering. They could get to training and something bad could happen to them because of that one thing. And again, maybe it's just my close relationship with God, but also like I like lose sleep at night over this kind of stuff. And it's hard because you do wrestle with this. Like you can tell them, you might have someone that is they would do anything to get in the military, but maybe they had one thing on their medical record. And I've always been taught by the leaders before me, as tempting as it can be to have that conversation, sometimes you have to, well, all the times you should take the long route and just take the extra step, get the additional medical documents that are required. Yeah, it might take 30 days, 40 days, 50, whatever. But in the long run, you're going to feel better about it. And like you said, you are instilling something in your applicants and in your warriors and in your soldiers from the very start. And it kind of sets the tone of their entire military experience. So I completely agree with you on that.
what kind of advice would you have for folks that are thinking about joining really any form of our military force or specifically the National Guard? What kind of advice do you have for folks?
That's a great question. I think the first piece of advice that I would have is to do as much research as possible. A lot of people come to me and they're like, "Oh, I want to be a Marine because my grandfather was a Marine or so and so." And they want to carry on that family tradition. And while that's wonderful and you should, if that's something that you're passionate about, absolutely try to pursue that. But I encourage everybody, no matter what, or no matter what outside influences you have in your life are telling you what branch is better or what branch is this or what, just do your own research. Because I promise you that if you go and talk to a different recruiter, you might be dead set on the Marines, but if you don't connect with that recruiter, that could potentially be the first part of a bad experience for you if you take that step. Not saying you should let one person dictate your entire future, but you might have a better connection or better conversation with an Air Force recruiter or with a National Guard recruiter or whatever. So my first piece of advice is to do your research, read every Reddit thread that you can find, watch YouTube videos, reach out to people that have already served or are serving in your life, and make the best decision for you. Shut out all that outside noise. I don't care if your cousin thinks that the National Guard is horrible and, we're weekend warriors. Did your cousin serve in the Army National Guard? No, find somebody that maybe has served in the Army National Guard and talk to them about their experience before you completely write it out.
Totally.
The second piece of advice that I would have is to, once you've done your research and you've talked to all the people, the second piece of advice I would have is to really sit down with your own thoughts. That's hard. Especially in this day and age, we have all of this outside noise with social media and TVs and all these things. Just turn everything off and sit down, really figure out your life, try to anyway, and try to picture what your life would be like in that certain role or branch or whatever, and figure out if that's really what you want to do. Because if you have been able to do that, you've done your research and then you've sat down with yourself and you've figured out if this is something that you want to do, then you're going to have the best experience because you're going into it with an open mind, a positive mind. And I think it just really helps set you up for success. The third piece of advice, and this kind of, I guess, goes into the second piece of advice, is to just take the leap of faith. No matter what decision that you make in life, it's going to be scary. Like, no matter what you do, or it doesn't matter. Like, new decisions and new experiences can be absolutely terrifying. But I think there's a quote that says, like, if you don't jump, then you'll stay in the same place for your whole life. And that's something that I personally can't do. So had I not just taken that leap of faith, gone and done my research with my recruiter, gone and sat down with my thoughts and wrestled with this idea and really figured out what I wanted, like, my life would not be where it is today. So I think all in all, that is the best 3 pieces of advice that I can give to anybody that's considering joining any branch. And I hope that it can at least help one person.
I feel like those things apply in all areas of life, whether I'm buying a Subaru, whether I'm thinking about marrying
Yes.
that person that I've been with for a number of years. Wow. I mean, in 2023, soon to be 2024, we have so much that we can research and investigate as individuals before we ever have to make a decision. And then
Right.
I love your point of pause. All right, so you've done your research, you've talked to a few people, maybe a lot of people. Now stop. Get curious with what's on inside of you. What is the driving force of your motivation to join the military, to not join the military, to, like I said, get married, to buy a car, to do whatever these things are? And then I like that last part. And what was going through my mind when you said take a leap of faith? Just make a decision. It doesn't have to be the right decision. Here's the deal. Life is full of a lot of not right decisions that shape us to get to a spot that we really get to live life in full color. We really
Right.
get to live the beauty of life and all of its complexities. But if we get caught up on trying to make the right decision always, it's going to keep us, I think, from making any decision a lot of the time.
That is very well said, and absolutely 100% true. And that's the thing. Like, I live by that quote. I love that quote. If you stay in the same place for your whole life, or you never jump, or it genuinely, whether you make the right decision or the wrong decision, it's going to help shape you as a person regardless. So just do it, take the leap of faith, and figure it out as you go.
Hey, you have been once again humble about this, but you recently got the opportunity to compete. I don't know if it was at the state level or the national level for Rookie Recruiter of the Year.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience.
Yeah. So, um, luckily, I was chosen to represent my company. So in West Virginia, there are 5 companies that are a part of our recruiting and retention battalion. I am an Echo company. I was selected to be the representative for Echo Company to compete at the state level for Rookie Recruiter of the Year. I don't know if for those military or non-military listeners, when you go to these boards, it's basically a panel of a lot of important people judging you. from
Good way
the
of saying it.
from the second you knock on the door, they are judging you,
Oh,
to the
100%.
walk, to your uniform, if your hair is nice and neat, and then down to the answers to the questions that they ask you. So this board for me at the state level was the first military board I had ever been a part of. Which I know people say that's crazy. Like, how did you not go to a promotion board? But things are different in the National Guard. So this was the first board I was ever a part of, and I was absolutely terrified. And the first question that they asked me, I had no idea. I had no clue what the answer to the question was. And I looked at Sergeant Major respectfully and I said, Sergeant Major, we're off to a really great start because I have no idea what the answer to that question is. And I was just honest with him up front. I was like, I don't know. And he said, that's okay. No one's known this question. It was a trick question. I was like, thank God, because, this could have been a really rough board. But I went up against some really strong competition, and all the recruiters here in the state I believe that they truly are passionate about what they're doing, especially the rookie recruiters. We're fresh on the streets and we're out there. We're still, reality hasn't hit us yet, so they say. So it was a really great competition, and to be surrounded by other individuals that are like-minded and hungry and driven. It was just a great all-around environment. So luckily, I won the state Rookie Recruiter of the Year competition, and then I was selected at that point to go to Washington, D.C. to compete at the regional level. So at the regional level, we went up against our region. So that was Delaware, PA, Virginia, DC, of course, West Virginia, and I think there's one more. I can't remember off the top of my head right this. Oh, Maryland. So I competed against their rookie recruiters of the year. So if I was nervous going into the first board, I was even more nervous because now I knew these people were the best of the best in their state. And it was a great networking opportunity. Again, just as terrifying, but I went into it with more confidence because I didn't know these people. So it kind of helped actually not knowing them. If I did a horrible job, they weren't going to go back to my state and be like, oh, that's Sergeant Gump. She was really bad. But I went into it with great confidence. And even the questions that I did not know, I just took a confident guess, even if it was not even related to it. And I think that, helped me connect with the board. At one point, one of the board members had even said, you had me second guessing if it was the right answer or not, because you were so confident in your delivery. So I kept that in my back pocket, but I did not win first place. And I almost said, unfortunately, I did not win first place because that's, it's sad. Like everybody wants to win first place, but I did bring home second place, and winning second place, honestly, allowed me to really just like push myself that much more. It just gave me that much more drive and determination to do even better this recruiting year. So then hopefully I have a shot at returning next year as like the seasoned recruiter of the year. So overall, like I said, it was a great networking experience. We got to travel all over DC and meet people from, those different areas. So we got to kind of bounce recruiting ideas off of each other. And I got to see what made them successful and then vice versa. So I got to bring back some information back to the state.
Wow, I love it. And that was actually the post that grabbed my attention with you when you were posting about getting second place and just having a good mind frame on it, right? Is this a defeat? Is it Talladega Nights? If you ain't first, you're last. No, there's lots of other, you can be second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. There's lots of other, right? And we can celebrate the opportunity that we have, right? To compete and to network with other folks. And second place is pretty dang good when you're competing against people with that caliber.
Yeah. Yeah. I took it at first, like I said, that initial thought, because when you go into something like this, if you give it 100% of yourself plus more, I'm thinking like all the hair I lost over the past recruiting year because I was so stressed, all the tears that my office partner had to listen to and see, I'm thinking about all these things, the culmination of things that had made me who I was at that point. And I was like, I could either be sad that I didn't win first place, or I could be grateful that I even made it to this point in the first place. So thank you. I'm really glad that was able to reach you. And now, it's opened up this conversation for us. So I'm super grateful.
Hey, I a lot of times I like to get into wellness, and you've already mentioned a few things. You've mentioned the fact that you enjoy yoga. I do too. I think that's a great practice to have in our lives. You've mentioned your faith, which I have no doubt is a piece of that. We've been talking about a lot of highlights. Life hasn't always been easy for you. I've seen some of your other YouTube videos talking about, the tough stuff in life. What do you do to take care of your brain and take care of your body?
The first thing that I usually like to do is just cry it out.
It's good.
There's no denying.
Yeah.
There's no denying. Sometimes you just have to let it out. And I'm like the rock in my family, so I try to keep everything together in front of everybody else, but sometimes you just got to let it out. And then at that point, you have a decision. either you can continue to sulk and be sad and cry, or you can learn and grow from whatever it is you're going through. And I like to be a positive individual in all areas of my life. It's not always easy. Trust me, it is not always easy. And sometimes you have that conversation with God, like, why is this happening to me? But I think that every challenge that you face, every obstacle that you go through is to help shape you into who you are supposed to be. So in order to take the best care of myself after I cried out, yoga is a huge, huge, um, outlet for me. I love going hot yoga. I like connecting with the people that I go to class with. And then I also like that time just to shut my phone off and really shut my brain off. Because my brain, I feel like, is always going 1,000 miles a minute. And if I don't force myself to take that time in solitude and just be alone with my thoughts, then I will probably lose my mind. So I use that as my creative outlet, to really take care of my mental and emotional health. And then, of course, as you mentioned, my faith, which is, very strong and still growing. Every season of life is hard, but knowing that I have a God that that loves me and is always going to be by my side no matter what obstacles, like I said, are thrown in my way, that is really what carries me through. And then another thing that I do is I have positive role models in my life. So there are a few people that are on my team. My office partner is really good at this. He is always reminding me, like, hey, you seem a little stressed out. This workload is a lot. What are you doing to take care of yourself? Have you gone to yoga in a couple days? And I'm like, well, I haven't. He's like, pack up your stuff, go home, go to yoga. Like, take care of yourself. So having people in my life that are supportive of healthy habits and encourage that, because if you aren't balanced in that way, everything else is just going to come crumbling down. So, having those people in my life, like I said, my boyfriend, he makes sure, he's like, hey, we're going to the gym this time, and I meet him there, and that's another great outlet. So, just having good people in your life too, that have positive mindsets, they can also help you get through any challenge or obstacle that you're faced with.
There are so many things there, once again, Andrea, that you're talking about. You're talking about schedule and stuff, right? That goes to, if you're in a significant relationship, one thing that my wife and I talk about on Marriage Mondays is we have to have the discipline of dating each other, right? If you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. That's just life. We have 4 daughters. She has a job as an educator. I just retired from law enforcement. If you don't put it on the calendar, it's not going to happen. And that doesn't always feel super romantic on the romantic relationship side, but schedule it, and then hopefully the romance will happen through us being disciplined and doing it, right? And then same thing with working out. Hey, it's Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
After work tonight, we're meeting at the gym, and we're going to put it on the calendar, and we're going to do it. And yeah, I've seen that in my life, that the seasons where I get undisciplined with scheduling things. And here's the thing, you don't got to do it all. I did a social media post this morning, talking about what I do each morning. Like, what is my core routine that I do to help my brain and my body? There's a whole lot of other things that I don't do every single day. I don't do yoga every single day. I don't exercise every single day. I have my core, right? That I do. And then I sprinkle in all those other things. And I mention that because I don't know what the Army National Guard did to you, but the Air Force to me made me believe that I could be perfect. I could fold my socks, underwear, and t-shirts to perfection. All right. I could do it to perfection. And so I got out of training thinking I need to be perfect. And it took me a lot of years to realize that perfection is impossible this side of heaven. And there's only one person that has ever lived perfectly. And other than that, I need to be okay with falling into grace. Let's be great. Let's go out and impact people's lives. I still want to pursue greatness.
Absolutely.
I don't want to pursue perfection. I don't know. Has the Army National Guard at all kind of given you, have you had to wrestle with that, or did you already have a good balance?
Definitely did not always have a good balance. I think I was born a perfectionist, which is my biggest flaw. um, I do struggle with that. I feel like if I'm going to do something, like I have to give it 100%. And sometimes you're crushed when you're like, oh my gosh, I worked hours on this or this, and there's still something wrong with it. Like a recruiting example would be the paperwork and the recruiting packet for all of my applicants. There's an extensive process that paperwork has to go through, and sometimes it'll come back and it'll say, oh, we can't move forward with this person because we're missing this document or that document. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I have a checklist. How did I miss that? And then I get frustrated with myself, but then I have to remember it's okay to make mistakes. Like you don't have to be perfect. Even though, society places this huge emphasis on being perfect, with the filters and the this and, everybody living this perfect life and driving the fancy car and all the things. But I think one way that I've gotten through that is just by taking a step back, realizing, hey, it's okay. Like you're human. You're going to make mistakes, and this is just a part of life. And then accepting that has really helped me get through some of those tough times.
Yeah, I love it. I think perfection causes people to lie, hide, and conceal. Not like they're liars, but if we are in organizations where we can't fail, then when we do mess up, we're like, oh shoot, I hope no one sees this. I hope I can fix it real quick. Whereas when we have open dialogue and we can have good debriefs of, hey, I messed this up yesterday. I didn't fill out some of the forms. Let's
Right.
look at the checklist. Is it on
Right.
the checklist? Does it need to be bold on the checklist? Do we maybe move things around because the checklist isn't in order of the way we actually do it, right? We can create great dialogue with our teams if we're okay with failure and talking about it. If we're not okay with failure, we're never going to have those breakthrough conversations. And that goes for our work organizations and it goes for our home as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because when I first started this job, that administrative paperwork was like the hardest part for me, which, didn't seem like much sense, because I'm like, well, I went to college, I have a degree. Why is this not coming naturally to me? So I was getting frustrated with myself. And between my office partner and one of my other teammates, and then of course like my boss, he sat me down and he did that. He said, well, look at the checklist. This wasn't even on the checklist, so why are you beating yourself up about it? Let's fix the checklist. And so, now it's easier to do those things and to get through that than it was before, when I was originally like, come on, like this is my fourth recruit now, how am I not able to get this right? What's wrong with me? But it wasn't anything that was wrong with me. It was just the process that I hadn't created for myself in that time. And I was following, something different that wasn't helpful. So, no, I completely agree with that statement. And it's hard too. That's something that I've always, when you talk about social media now, um, I've always tried to be as transparent as possible with people and share the challenges that I'm facing and post videos without makeup on and without a filter and with all that, because that's real. I think this generation, especially this younger generation, the next greatest generation, they are craving connection because they missed out on so much of it. And I think that's one thing that has maybe made me a successful recruiter, is that I am just real with them. I'm not going to tell you that everything's going to be perfect in the military. I faced a lot of challenges over the course of my 8-year career, but I think being open and honest about it and talking about it is what allows people to connect with you even more. So, they say social media is a highlight reel, but I use it as kind of like a diary for me to just document everything that I'm going through. And that's helped me, stop focusing so much on being perfect and making sure the aesthetic is right or whatever, you know. And that's just the, one core value that I've tried to stay, true to myself when it comes to sharing and posting and just being who I am.
I love it. And I like who you are, Andrea. I don't know you completely, but what the snapshot I'm getting, the way I see you trying to make this world better and impact people's lives, I think that is where all of our pursuit should be.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so grateful we were able to, like I said, have this conversation. And and get to know each other. And thank you for providing me too. I know you might have some more questions, or maybe we're wrapping it up, but this has just been a great opportunity for me to be able to share my story with your listeners as well. So I'm just very grateful to be here and that you came across my profile. So.
And folks, I came across that just by a single post, and I have been digging into Andrea's different channels that she has, and you can hear a whole lot more of her story, some of the adversities that she overcame, and just her mindset in life. What are some of the ways that people can connect with you?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram. That's my biggest platform. That's at Andrea M. Gump. And then I'm also on YouTube. I started vlogging again, which has been fun. And it's also at Andrea M. Gump. It's the same across the board. So there are a lot of fake profiles out there of me, unfortunately, but it's weird. I don't get it. But I would love to connect with your listeners more. And if they have any questions about the Army National Guard or just life in general, my direct messages are always open.
Love it. Well, for the listeners, look down in the show notes. All of those links will be down there. Andrea, time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff, and you have given me an awful lot of yours. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great day. Wow, folks, what did you think of Andrea's perspectives? What I loved about this conversation was a number of times when I asked a question, we didn't rehearse this at all. And her answers, the layered answers that really showed maturity and just some of these foundations in life were remarkable. I really was digging it, and I'm hoping that you got some of that great perspective like I did. Hey folks, Jaimie and I want to hear from you. How are we doing here on the podcast? There's a few different ways for you to communicate back to us. First and foremost, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That will cause the next episode to pop up. You can also rate and review us if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. There's 5 stars waiting on our main page, and we'd really appreciate a 5-star rating. That'll increase the viewability of the podcast. However, folks, if we haven't earned your 5 stars, keep your stars. Instead, shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let us know how to make a better future Marriage Monday topics or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Let's go out and take care of the people in our tribe. Take care of each other. God bless.